Jasmine Rivera stumbled forward, the weight of her battered suitcase tugging unevenly against her grasp. The sun had dipped low behind the distant palm trees, casting long shadows over the pristine driveway of the exclusive resort. Her clothes were rumpled and dust-streaked from her long journey, her tangled hair falling messily over tired eyes. She longed nothing more than a moment's respite in the elegant haven before her. The sprawling facade, gleaming windows reflecting the golden hues of twilight, promised comfort and renewal, if only the front desk clerk would let her reach it. Inside the lobby, a crystal chandelier scattered soft light across marble floors, and an air of calm exclusivity hung about the space like a rare perfume. Jasmine approached the check-in counter with cautious hope, clutching her reservation papers that felt more fragile than ever. The clerk, a tall woman in crisp uniform with sharply applied makeup and a cold smile, regarded her with thinly veiled contempt. Her eyes flicked over Jasmine's tired frame, the dirt smudged on her jacket, the unkempt hair, that silent litmus test of belonging. "I'm here to check in," Jasmine said softly, extending the papers. The clerk's lips curled into a slight, mocking smile. "I'm afraid we have no record of a reservation under that name," she said, her voice icy yet polite enough to sting. "Perhaps you should reconsider whether this is the place for you." Jasmine's throat tightened. "I booked weeks ago. Please, I just need to rest." "Unfortunately, ma'am, not everyone fits in here," the clerk replied, her gaze piercing, dismissive. Guests nearby shifted uneasily, eyebrows raised, whispers fluttering. Jasmine's cheeks burned as the room seemed to close around her. This oasis she had imagined now felt like an out-of-reach dream. She clenched her fists, refusing to vanish without a fight. The front desk clerk's gaze hardened as she took a step closer, keeping her voice low but unmistakably sharp enough to carry through the hushed lobby. "I must ask, ma'am, are you certain these documents aren't forged? We do receive requests from unqualified guests from time to time." Her words lingered in the air like a cold breeze, slicing through Jasmine's fragile hope. Jasmine's breath hitched, the sting of public accusation washing over her. A knot tightened in her chest. She had expected fatigue, maybe some inconvenience after a day of traveling, but not this, a thinly veiled accusation characterizing her as a fraud. It was humiliation wrapped in civility, wielded like a weapon to bar her from the very place she longed to enter. "I assure you, everything is legitimate," Jasmine said, trying to steady her voice, holding up the reservation confirmation on her phone. "I've been planning this trip for weeks. Please just check again." The clerk's eyes flickered back briefly to the screen but never softened. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Without proper identification and confirmation from management, I cannot proceed." The emphasis was clear: "You are not welcome here." Around them, whispers began to ripple among the other guests. A man in a tailored suit exchanged a discreet glance with his companion, eyebrows raised over a mocking smile. A woman draped in expensive silk clutched her clutch tighter, her gaze moving away quickly as if embarrassed by the scene but unwilling to look away entirely. Jasmine felt the heat of their silent judgments, like eyes turning her into a spectacle, a pariah among the privileged. She swallowed the lump forming in her throat. "Please," she said again, voice barely above a whisper, "just one more check. I have the reservation and ID." The clerk lifted her chin with a brief nod but didn't move to assist further. "You should know that many people try to exploit our hospitality. Perhaps you should have made arrangements with a reputable travel agent next time rather than attempting to appear here unannounced." Each word dug deeper. Jasmine's jaw clenched, resisting tears that burned behind her eyes. How did they see her? As some desperate outsider unworthy of entering their world? It was a painful verdict, echoed in the ice-cold corridors of the resort. Her fists clenched tighter by her sides as she took a step back, refusing to give the clerk any more fodder to dismiss her. Around her, the guests whispered but kept their distance, their polite avoidance only amplifying her isolation. Nobody stepped forward to offer a word of support or a glance of understanding. Jasmine stood there as the clerk gave a faint smirk, a triumph veiled thinly by professionalism. For a heartbeat, the weight of loneliness threatened to bow her spirit. But beneath that fragile surface, resolve began to kindle. She would not be cast aside because of appearance or circumstance. Not here. Not now. With quiet dignity, she turned on her heel, her eyes scanning the grand lobby one last time. The promise of refuge remained just out of reach, but so did surrender. Outside, beneath the fading hues of sunset, Jasmine drew a deep breath. The night was still young, and though the doors behind her were closed, the story was far from over. Jasmine leaned against the cool glass of the resort's large front windows, watching the last golden rays snake through the palm fronds. Her reflection wavered on the surface, a blurred image of a woman both vulnerable and fiercely determined. Inside, the lobby remained alive with muted murmurs and the gleam of chandeliers, but to Jasmine, it felt like a locked fortress, one she longed to enter yet was barred from crossing. She closed her eyes briefly, the weight of earlier events pressing heavy on her mind. Doubt stirred quietly. Was she out of place here, truly an outsider? Her scruffy jacket and travel-stained hair had drawn scorn, her modest reservation dismissed as a fabrication. The gulf between the luxury to which she aspired and her present reality yawned wider than she had imagined. But beneath the fatigue, a spark refused to be extinguished. "I deserve this," she murmured to herself, her voice firm despite its softness. "No matter what they think." A sudden ripple of footsteps behind her startled her, and she turned to see the resort's manager approaching. Tall, impeccably dressed in a dark suit, his expression was cautious but laced with condescension. Jasmine straightened, bracing herself. "Ms. Rivera," he began with clipped politeness, "I've reviewed your reservation details personally." She nodded slowly, waiting. "Unfortunately," he continued, "there appears to be some discrepancy with your paperwork. Moreover, our policy requires us to ensure all guests meet certain standards that, frankly, your appearance and conduct have made us question." Jasmine's stomach twisted. Stood there, under his measured gaze, she felt the cold bite of exclusion again. "Standards based on what?" she asked quietly. "Appearance? Travel fatigue? You haven't even given me a chance." He sighed, like lecturing a child. "We must protect the experience of our valued guests. I'm sure you understand." The words honed her frustration sharper. She swallowed hard, anger simmering beneath the surface. "I understand you judge me before you know me. But I won't accept that." The manager's lip twitched, a mix of irritation and pity. "Very well. We will hold your reservation for tonight. But should problems arise, we will have no choice but to cancel." Jasmine's jaw clenched, but she held her ground. "Thank you." As he turned away, her phone vibrated in her hand. She glanced down to see an incoming call from an unknown number labeled only as M. Curiosity pried her attention, and with a flicker of hope she answered. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was calm and authoritative. "Jasmine, this is Maurice Delaney. We spoke briefly at the conference earlier this year." Recognition dawned. Maurice was a prominent business executive, a man with influence and one of the resort's key investors. "Yes," she replied cautiously. "I remember." "I heard about your situation," Maurice continued. "It's unfortunate how appearances can mislead. But I want you to know that things can change quickly. I'm here if you need assistance." Jasmine's heart lifted. "Thank you, Maurice. That means more than you know. There's more we can discuss in person. For now, keep your head up." The line went silent. Jasmine closed her eyes, drawing strength from the unexpected alliance. The path ahead was uncertain and fraught with challenges, but the glimmer of support strengthened her resolve. She looked back at the resort's grand entrance, lights beginning to twinkle as dusk deepened. Amid her swirling thoughts, a fire sparked within, a determination to prove her worth, not just by appearance but by spirit. Steeling herself, Jasmine tightened her grip on her suitcase and stepped forward once more, ready for whatever came next. The battle was far from over, and though the odds seemed stacked against her, she refused to let doubt consume her. What would you do if you found yourself judged so unfairly? Would you stand your ground or walk away? The night deepened, and the breezy warmth of early evening settled into a soft coolness around the resort grounds. Jasmine Rivera appeared again at the entrance, but there was no trace of the frazzled traveler from hours before. She moved with quiet confidence, her hair tamed into smooth waves, her clothing crisp and elegant, as if she had stepped out from a different life entirely. By her side, an imposing figure walked arm in arm with her, a man whose presence commanded attention without needing to raise his voice. Guests sitting in the lounge glanced up and did a double take. Whispers burst softly among the clusters of high-status visitors as the couple approached the front desk. Jasmine's heart pounded, but her gaze was steady, serene, unwavering. The man stopped just short of the clerk's counter, his tall frame and tailored suit marking him a figure of authority. His eyes scanned the room before settling on the clerk, whose earlier smugness had curdled into visible unease. "Good evening," the man said, voice rich and measured. "I am Christian Hawthorne, CEO of Hawthorne Resorts." The clerk stiffened, her shoulders taut with suppressed shock. Christian's gaze fixed on her with quiet command. "I have just returned from a brief business trip," Christian continued, "and found it necessary to make an important update while I was away." His hand slipped into his coat pocket, pulling out a crisp document that he slid across the counter. With a smile, he addressed the small assembly of guests who had now turned their attention fully to the scene unfolding. "I have added my new wife, Jasmine Rivera, to the ownership papers of this resort." A stunned silence fell over the lobby. The clerk's lips parted, her brief mask of composure crumbling as her eyes darted nervously between the document and Jasmine's poised figure. Gasps rippled around the room. The woman in silk clutched her companion's arm, the well-dressed man's mouth hung open. Eyes that watched only moments before with thinly veiled disdain now shimmered with disbelief and confusion. Jasmine's cheeks flushed softly, but she held her head high. Her hand found Christian's, fingers intertwining with quiet assurance, a subtle yet unmistakable symbol of new alliances and unapologetic strength. "This is a new chapter," Christian said, his gaze warm as he looked at Jasmine. "We intend to honor the spirit of this resort equally and inclusively." The front desk clerk's eyes narrowed with resentment, but she refrained from interrupting, her earlier triumph now shattered. Jasmine felt the weight of all the unspoken words, the judgments, the moments when she had been pushed aside and humiliated. And yet, standing tall, she allowed herself a small, victorious smile. The guests around her began to murmur in approval, some even stepping closer, their postures softening as they extended tentative smiles or nods of acknowledgement. Christian shifted, offering Jasmine a polite nod. "Welcome home." As they moved past the stunned clerk, a simmering anticipation buzzed through the crowd. The once unwelcoming halls of the resort were now brimming with whispered excitement, an unspoken promise that the social order was on the cusp of transformation. Jasmine glanced back briefly, catching the clerk's gaze one last time. There was no bitterness, only a quiet clarity. The game had changed, irrevocably. What would you do if the world suddenly recognized your worth, changing everything in an instant? Would you rise with grace, ready to rewrite the rules? The next morning, the lobby of the Hawthorne Resort gleamed with the soft light filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows. It was a new day framed by a shifting atmosphere, an undercurrent of excitement mingled with cautious respect. Jasmine Rivera entered the grand space, her posture poised, carrying a composed energy that hinted at change. The buzz that had circulated the night before lingered in the air. Guests and staff alike were acutely aware that Jasmine was no longer just an outsider. At the front desk, the clerk who had denied Jasmine entry hours earlier stood behind the counter, her usual confident smile replaced by a strained tightness around her lips. When Jasmine approached, The woman's eyes flicked up, and for a fleeting moment, hesitation shimmered before she regained a semblance of professionalism. "Good morning, Ms. Rivera," the clerk said, voice careful but forced. "Welcome back." Jasmine met the gaze steadily, offering a calm nod. "Thank you." Her voice was gentle but firm. "I'd like to discuss some concerns about yesterday's incident." The clerk's eyes flickered, and the tension hung thick between them. Jasmine continued without pause, "I believe respect and dignity are the foundation of hospitality. Every guest, regardless of appearance or first impressions, deserves kindness and fair treatment." A hush seemed to settle in the surrounding area. Several guests paused their conversations, ears attuned to the exchange. It was a moment that transcended the usual ebb and flow of resort life. Christian Hawthorne appeared beside Jasmine, his presence commanding quiet authority. "Jasmine's right," he said, his tone measured but resolute. "This place represents not just luxury, but also inclusivity and respect. We will be revisiting staff training to ensure everyone embodies these values." The clerk's posture shifted. At last, the wall of denial showed cracks. Her mask of aloof superiority softened, revealing a face tinged with regret. "I apologize for my conduct, Ms. Rivera. You have every right to be treated with respect here." Jasmine's lips curved into a generous smile. "Thank you. That means a lot." Her gaze swept the gathered crowd, extending an unspoken invitation for kindness and understanding to ripple beyond this moment. Over the following days, news of Jasmine's remarkable turnaround traveled swiftly through the resort and beyond, stirring conversations about prejudice, worth, and the power of resilience. Guests who once glanced askance now sought her out with warm greetings. The staff, inspired by new leadership and example, lifted their service into a more empathetic, welcoming art. Jasmine found herself walking the resort grounds with a quiet grace, no longer marked by weariness but by confidence honed through challenge. In the serene beauty of the gardens, the gentle lap of the ocean waves, and the elegant hum of renewed community, she felt not only vindicated but transformed. As the sun dipped again toward the horizon, casting a golden glow over the water, Jasmine paused to breathe deeply, savoring the moment. Her eyes shone with hard-won wisdom and quiet joy. Sometimes, the most unexpected storms bring the clearest skies. What strength lies within you when faced with judgment? How do you rise to claim the respect you deserve? If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. See you in our next story.